everyone. Mr. James O'Neill here, speaker and owner of Mastery for All. Mastery for All partners with school districts to bring mastery of mathematics through professional development, through coaching, and through consulting. I want to see everybody master mathematics, specifically our Black boys who have historically not mastered it in this space. And so one day I was literally on LinkedIn and there was this article titled, "Is Math a Racist Subject?" And I read that article and I said, I want to do a podcast on that. And so I'm bringing in my friends, people that I've met in the space, people that actually have reached out to me and say, hey, I want to speak to this subject about equity. And so I did not prompt them in their answers. They are literally speaking from their experiences, from the research as it relates to equitable instruction in mathematics. So I want you to sit tight. I want you to have an open mind, an open heart, an open spirit to listen and to hear these experts speak to this subject. Is math a racist subject? And I'm going to see you on the other side. What's up, everybody? This is Mr. James O'Neill with another episode from Mastery for All. And today's topic is the same topic. This is episode 4. Is math a racist subject? And I have joining me today is Miss Rolanda Baldwin. Hey, Rolanda.
Hello, James. How are you?
I am great. I am doing amazing. It's good to see you. Affectionately known as Ro. And so I am excited that you are with me today. And as always, I always talk about the bio introduced because I want y'all to know that I'm not bringing on somebody that I just picked up and saw on the street. I just want y'all to know that these people are legit. So
you're probably in the math streets.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the only streets that I'm picking people from up from is the math streets. So with nearly 2 decades dedicated to mathematics and education, Rolanda Baldwin's journey has spanned various roles. Her experience encompasses middle and high school math teaching, math instructional coaching, and district math curriculum coordinator with a large district in North Carolina, where we're from. Rolanda began her professional voyage at Unbound Ed as a math specialist before transitioning to the role of math director. Presently, Rolanda holds the role of Vice President VP of Mathematics, orchestrating the growth and evolution of Unbound Ed's entire math, science, and Unbound Ed planning process known as UPP program portfolio. Her resolute belief in the potential of every individual as a math person fuels her passion. She remains steadfast in her commitment to reshaping educational systems and frameworks to empower educators in planning for and enacting grade level, engaging, affirming, and meaningful math instruction. Can you all give it up for Miss Rolanda Baldwin? Whoop, 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 whoop. Again, I'm so glad that you are here and you answered the call.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, ma'am. You know, not everybody is willing to answer the call. So I'm glad that you answer the call. And so I always start the podcast off just by asking the very first question, which is the title of the podcast and your thoughts around this question. So here it is. Is math a racist subject, according to Rolanda Baldwin?
Well, I'm glad you asked. When I think about math, the subject itself is not inherently racist, but the way that we teach it, particularly here in the United States, can have some racist implications. Here in the United States, overwhelmingly, we emphasize decontextualize procedural math, and it is just the antithesis of the grade level, engaging, affirming, and meaningful instruction. And I think a lot of times when we say a math person, we have a particular archetype in our brains. And a lot of times it's typically not a person of color or not a female. And so a lot of times math is taught in a way that would cater to someone who fits this archetype that we have in our heads.
And that archetype usually is
I would say a white male.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I was talking on the last episode, I was talking to a black male. His name is Christopher Robles, and he was just talking about he's not a mathematician. And then previously, I was talking to Dr. Kim, who you know because we
Yes.
serve in Unbound Ed, work as contractors in Unbound Ed, and she gave us a definition of a mathematician, and it was who we are. And I was just like, yes, we are. And sometimes, when the archetype, like you just said, we see someone else, and so we will try to remix things so as to fit in instead of just claiming who we are. We are mathematicians, people that do math, live
Absolutely.
by math, loves math, teach math. That's who we are. And so
That's who we
sometimes,
are.
yeah, sometimes the archetype, like you said, doesn't necessarily fit what we've seen normally. But that's who we are. So it's what you're saying that the subject inherently is not, but the way we present it. You talked about this procedural approach to what that math is. Why is that problematic in the way we present math?
Because when we present math in a procedural approach, we basically are just imitating these procedures and these algorithms that have already been figured out how to do. So we're really not preparing students to be 21st century citizens where they need to be innovative. We are preparing students to be in jobs that don't exist yet.
Wow.
So if we're just teaching them to be imitators and follow this procedure and do this, we're really not helping them to be problem solvers. We're not helping them to be innovative. We're not helping them to think critically. So we're really, in my opinion, I guess it's my opinion, we're not teaching them math, because ultimately what math is noticing patterns, generalizing those patterns, and then applying those generalizations to the things that we see in the world around us
Yeah,
and
yeah,
using
yeah.
it to navigate our world. So that's ultimately what math is. But a lot of times, school math is distilled down to how fast can you add, subtract, multiply, solve equations, factor polynomials. Like it's distilled down to that, and it doesn't translate over to our real, actual lived life.
Yeah, I love like how you said how you describe math, the noticing of patterns and generalizing those patterns and synthesizing and looking at those and connecting those patterns. When you said it, I just thought about life, like and cycles
Exactly.
that we can end up going on in life. I literally thought about the time right when I graduated and I got a job, and one day I was just like, where's all my money going? And I didn't know until I synthesized, put aside my the online banking, and I realized I was eating out all the time. And it was
Mm-hmm.
eating up my money. And that day, I remember that day, I got a spreadsheet and I started recording everything I did. And I was like, we're going to start cooking. We're going to learn how to cook. We're going to learn. But in that moment, like I literally had to sit there and find the pattern within
Yes.
my budget and really
Yes.
make a decision to say, okay, if you want something different, this is what we're going to have to try now. And when I think about the process in math, like how many times that you try something and it didn't work, and then you're just like, oh, let me try something else. Let me analyze this a little bit more. So I love the way you describe math. I just muted myself for a moment. So I want to go in a little bit more and just ask you about, and I know you've been in math in these math streets for a very long time, but you still look good. So that's where we at. That's where we're at. So what has been your experience in making sure that all races master math? I know we talked about this archetype that we see, usually the white male, and we're just like, there are assumptions about that image. And so what's your experience about making sure that all races master mathematics?
That is a great question. Well, I am a non-traditional educator. So like growing up, I just never gravitated towards math. I always liked it. I was introduced to the field of engineering through this minority introduction to engineering, MIT program at Tuskegee University. And because people kept telling me I should be an engineer because I was good at math. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what an engineer is. So when I was a junior in high school, I got the opportunity to go to this program at Tuskegee University. And I was like, engineering is cool. I want to be an engineer. So I actually, my degree is in electrical engineering, and I actually worked as an engineer for about 8 years once I left grad school.
I didn't know that.
So,
That's
learn
very
something
interesting
every
to find
day.
out. Come on, engineering background. I see you. All right.
So while I was doing that, I was also at my church and in my community. I had myself along with my sister, my younger sister. We had a mentorship program for youth within the church and within the community who were interested in going to college. And we found out a lot of times that when they started thinking about it, I'm not gonna say it was too late, but it was very late in the process, and they had to play catch up. So combine like my love of math and engineering with, my love of the youth and helping youth. That's how I got into education ultimately.
Gotcha.
So my job was outsourced to India, and they gave me another position, but I hated the new position. And I was like, you know what? I'd rather be teaching some children. So I came into math, and I came in teaching at a Title I school. I came into math with the thought of like, I want to go into education and I want to make all students love math as much as I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I came in with this like very idealistic, I'm going to make everybody love math attitude. But then once I got here, I was like, what is happening? Why?
No.
I don't understand. So my focus has always been on Black and brown children excelling in math. And when I got here and saw what was happening, that's when it became clear to me, because I knew math always came easy to me, but it doesn't always come easy to other people for various reasons. So that's when it became clear to me that I had to start thinking outside of the box and not teaching math the way that it had been taught to me, because I truly wanted to reach all students. A lot of times math is more, is seen as a gatekeeper of like, either you are a math person or you're not. Like it's some innate ability that you're either born with or you're not born with, and you just kind of get separated. But I was determined to like not accept that and to know that every student could do math. So I always sought out training when I was a teacher, sought out training that would help me to present math in a different way, so that students who typically had not seen success in math would have access to that success. So that was my whole reason why I wanted to teach math, because I wanted Black and brown kids to have access and to love math as much as I did, and to have the opportunities that I was able to have.
Yeah. So you said something in there that I wanted to interrogate just a little bit. You said when you came out of engineering and you got into the classroom, you was like, what is happening here? Like, so I specifically just want to know what was happening when you stepped from one career into teaching mathematics. What did you notice? What did you see? What did you notice and wonder?
So, well, some of it was just from the way school is run versus how business is run. That was like my first difference. And like in a business, particularly a for-profit business, if you are doing something that is not working and you're losing money, you stop doing that thing and you do something better. And when I got into education, I felt like we were continuing to do things that weren't working.
Gotcha.
And I'm not saying that people were being completely complacent of like, well, but at the same time, there was this undercurrent of like, well, this is just how it is, and we just gonna try to, make it work. So that was the first thing I noticed, just like the approach to problems was different. And then as far as the students were concerned, I guess I would say I thought again, I came in like very idealistic. I had looked at all those little math movies, like the
Yeah.
movie with the like I just got to go in and make them love math, and they're just
Right.
gonna love it. Within a couple of months. They're gonna love it, and I underestimated. Like just because I made it engaging and fun, I underestimated the math trauma that
Yeah.
some students possess. Like when my first year of teaching, I was teaching 8th grade. So they had a math experience, 12 years of a math experience before they got to me. And I really underestimated what it took to kind of undo that and counteract that, so that they could begin to see math as something that they could do and something that was attainable for them, and not like this far off distant thing that's only there for special people.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, because it also, when I heard you sharing about how math came easy to you, I think sometimes when you step into a space where, and I'm reminded when I first stepped into a classroom, and I also entered as an 8th grade, but I went to school to become a teacher, and I'm just like, oh yeah, we're going to do this, and it just makes sense. And I remember asking just about integer rules, and I did not know that when I put -5 minus 2 on the board, that I get my kids to be like -3 or 3. And I'm just like, yo, what's happening? Like, why don't we know it's just stuff that
Right.
I thought that made sense. But again, like when it was presented to me, it wasn't presented conceptually. It was presented like an algorithm. My teacher said, whenever you see a subtraction sign, turn that thing to plus or negative. And so
Right. Add a line, change the sign.
Yep. So I always said, and I didn't realize that's what I was doing, but when I saw that, I said -5 plus -2, it has to be -7, right? Because I'm adding on another. But I got into this world where everything was now, not going to say everything, but we were trying to teach the why and conceptual understanding. So to take a long journey to my question that I really wanted to get to is, how did you, I'll ask two things. What does math coming easy to you? What did that mean to you? And then how did you translate that? How did you have patience with kids that it did not come easy to? Because sometimes that is hard. And I found myself in the beginning teaching, just being like, listen, I'm about to move on. Y'all just ain't gonna get it. So, so how did you, first of all, what does it mean to say that math came easy to you? And then how did you find patience for the kids it didn't come easy for?
Oh, great questions. So for me, coming easy to me, I was a very compliant student. My parents, you go up to that school and you do whatever the teacher tell you to do. You be nice. You make them good grades. Like that was the whole thing. So, and now as an adult, looking back on that, I realized like I just assimilated. I assimilated into that archetype of what a good student was. So that meant mimicking the procedures that my teacher was doing. So I did what my teacher did. Oftentimes my homework consisted of 50 problems that was just like the problem that they had done. So I was like, she did this, I'm gonna do this. And it worked out. And I did not hit a wall until I got to pre-calculus. And I had left my regular high school and had gone to the North Carolina School of Science and Math. You go there 11th and 12th grade year.
Got you.
And the teachers at the school had written a book. And when I tell you, like, it was like looking back on it, like they were actually asking me to do math, not just mimic procedures. So that's when I hit a wall and was like, I don't understand. I'm not just making A's and not thinking. I had to start going to the teacher for help. And I was like, what is happening? But I had at that point, and of course, this is me as an adult reflecting upon it. By that point, I had a positive math identity because I had been successful in math up until that point. So I knew that was an obstacle that I could overcome. So I made the adjustments, and I was a stronger student because of it. And I was able to move on to calculus and, go to engineering school and take 1,000 math classes and do, relatively well in those classes because of me having the confidence to get through that hard period. So I guess to answer your question, I was good. Math came easy to me because I was able to mimic what the teacher did well, ultimately. And then because I had confidence, I was able, when it got hard, I was able to push through and develop some other tools that I could use to be successful at math. I can't say at that point it was coming easy to me anymore, but I had the confidence to push through.
I love it. Yeah.
So as far as having patience with the students where it wasn't coming quick, I have to say my first year of teaching, I was running purely on adrenaline. I was like, this is where God got me. I'm going to do what I need to do. I don't care what it takes. I know it's a little hard right now, but I'm just going to keep working with them. So I was just like, just motivated. I was like, okay, that didn't work. Okay, we're going to try something else. That didn't work. We're going to try something else. And fortunately, being at a Title I school, you get access to training that you may not get at other schools. So there was this training called algebraic thinking, which introduced to me how to use manipulatives, even though it was middle school, how to use manipulatives to teach concepts and how to teach conceptually and go through that whole concrete representational abstract continuum.
Mm-hmm.
So I was getting tools that I could use to try to reach the students. And for some it worked, for some it did not. Second year, that's when I hit a wall. I was like, okay, I thought I was going to save the world in a year. I didn't.
Right. Yep.
It was a little more difficult to be patient at that point. But
real, yeah.
I was fully committed. I honestly, it was a higher power, because I had felt like this was my purpose in life, was to give this access to Black and brown students. So that's what kept me sticking with it. I was like, I gotta at least do it, for a few more years, because that's what I committed to do. So it was truly like my intrinsic motivation, because it was really hard. And there were times where it was very discouraging, but I was able to stick with it. But yeah, it wasn't, I'm not going to try to act like it was easy. It wasn't.
Nah, I love the real, because I think sometimes even as presenters, and we go and we work with districts, and people sometimes feel like we are just coming in to like save the day and tell everybody what they're doing wrong and everything like that. I was like, y'all, I know the struggle. Like, I'm not up here because I literally just last week was telling some teachers, like, I'm presenting this, but understand that there were some years I did not reach every child. And I had to be like, I had to let somebody else reach them, because I don't have the juice for them. Like, I don't know, like they're not going to drink the Kool-Aid. They're not going to do whatever. And I've done everything and exhausted everything. And so, like you said, I'll come back to the drawing board again and try it again. And one thing that you really talked about was the confidence. I love the story. I love hearing people's story. Their math journey is like one of my favorite things. And just in Unbound is the math identity, when we ask people to write their stories, I just love hearing people's stories. And one thing that you talked about was the confidence that you had built up because of the positive math identity that you had going into this pre-calculus class, before it got like, hold up, y'all asking me to do stuff I ain't done before. Right. And so how do we build confidence in our kids? How did you build confidence in our kids? Because you and I know that whole confidence, competent, that line, kids don't engage because they're not confident and they don't feel competent, right? And so it could be the easiest thing to analyze, but because I don't feel capable, I'm right. It's hard, right? So how did you build that confidence?
That's a great question. And I would say early young teacher Ms. Baldwin was like, I'll just give them something below grade level that they can experience success with, and that will build their confidence to do grade level work. I did not experience much success with that. I'm not going to say it was a total flop, but it was not a widespread success with that. And as I got more mature in my teaching, I understood. I was like, oh, like I got to start with the grade level. I just got to have multiple access points to that grade level. So, so having problems that they could do, or giving them the space to address a grade level problem, and maybe using some methods that aren't considered grade level, but are still valid methods. Giving them the space to do that, and then helping to make those connections to the grade level approach. So that was, I found that built the confidence. And when I started teaching, we did not have what are now considered, the well, formerly known as Common Core state standards, but that type of standards, the career college ready standards. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
We did not have those standards, and I remember the first year that I had to teach those standards, and I was like, I'm gonna teach it, but are they gonna learn it? Like I have to admit, like I was kind of not afraid, but I was doubting of how it was gonna be. And like that first year that I taught those standards and those students rose to those standards, I was like, oh, this is it. This is it. Like you have to give them the grade level standards, give them access to the grade level standards, and that's going to build their confidence.
Yeah.
When they got those ELC scores back, they were so proud of themselves to see their progress and how all of their hard work paid off. And even throughout the year before, getting those scores back, but just seeing them progress through the curriculum, through the more rigorous standards, and them experiencing some success, like that built their confidence.
I love like the biggest point that I get from the story in building confidence is giving them access to that grade level work. And like you said, building on those on-ramp scaffolds, whatever you need to bring in to support them there, because ultimately there's nothing like getting to a test and just being like, what is this? I don't even know. Like I wasn't
exactly
prepared for this. Like, what is going on?
I ain't never seen none of this.
None of it. I wasn't able to practice or to even build being able to think through like the math and make the connections. I never had an opportunity to engage at this level. And so now you're giving me, asking me to explain my thinking and all that stuff. I've never explained my thinking. That's, my class where I caught my little hiccup was geometry. Because geometry was the first time where we were asked to explain and to make sense and to bring connection. I said, can you tell me? Because you've been telling me all these years. Now, all of a sudden, you want me to tell you. No, I can't turn that on just like that. I have to practice that. And so literally, I remember first teaching geometry. I was like, if the teacher would have gave me the book, I would have just taught myself. Honestly, because of the simple fact that it didn't make sense because I wasn't used to making sense through stuff. And so I literally started to realize, oh, this is the connection that I missed when I was in 9th grade, when I became a teacher. Oh, this makes so much sense. Like it never made sense to me because I wasn't taught to do the sense making. And so thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna switch gears for a second because, like at Mastery for All, I'm really about supporting all through supporting the brilliance of our Black boys, because many times when we look at statistics and data, we can see where that person at the end, broken down by race, the last person down there at the bottom of not reaching proficiency is usually our Black boys. And so I know you enter the world into the Black and brown community. And so I just want to ask you, what are your thoughts concerning why historically Black boys have been the lowest as it relates to proficiency in mathematics?
Glad you asked. This has been something that coming in that I always that was like something that was heavy on my heart, that Black boys being at the bottom. As a mother, my oldest child is a boy. And when I started teaching at the time, he was in 1st grade. Since then, he is now a college graduate. He's out living his own life. And the thing for me is that he experienced success in math. And I saw so many of his peers that weren't. So it was always like a question for me, like, what is it? And so when I started at Unbound Ed, I came in as a resident and I had to do a capstone. And that was my capstone. It was on, I was building an African-American male toolkit for math success.
Come on, toolkit. Yes, ma'am.
And what I found through my research a lot of it goes back to math identity. I would name that as one of the issues with the math identity, where we have a particular archetype where someone is seen as being good at math, and oftentimes that archetype is not a Black male. Mm-hmm. Another piece of that is just the rigid. I'm going to say this word wrong. Just how rigid the math classrooms are. And I would say boys in general are very active. Even thinking about my son, he, like, from the time he was like 3 months old, he just thought he could fly. Like, he would just do all these things. So boys are very active, and a lot of times the math classroom is very rigid. Like, you're supposed to, a good math student sits in their seat. They do what the teacher tells them to do. They're very still. So it kind of goes against the nature. And then a lot of times the behaviors of Black boys are interpreted in a negative way, even when they are not doing something that is necessarily negative. So in all of that, I think a lot of times teachers have low expectations. There's so much time spent around behavior where you're not putting the effort into teaching in a meaningful way. And then also giving Black boys the space to see themselves as mathematicians and as legitimate doers of math. So I think that's where the gaps are. And even in recent years, I have been in math classes. Let me slow down, back up. So I always taught secondary. I've taught every grade from 6 to 12. So once I began working at the district level, I would also have to support elementary schools. And so I would go to the elementary schools and I would see these young Black boys, and they were so interested in school, particularly like kindergarten, first grade. And I would say, well, what? Because by the time I got them in middle and high school, they were so disillusioned.
Yeah.
And so I had to ask, like, what happened between this curiosity and this just wanting to learn that was happening in the lower elementary? Like, what happened in between that? And so as I continued to visit schools, I saw many examples. I wish this wasn't true, but I feel like almost every math class I went into, if someone was sitting in the corner isolated from the student,
talk about it.
It was always a Black male.
Yep.
So you have just marginalized this person from class. And then I've always, just recently, even since I've been in Unbound Ed visiting classrooms, I went on numerous occasions, went to an elementary school class. There's a Black boy in the class. The teacher is teaching the lesson, the grade level lesson. The Black boy is responding, answering questions. In fact, responding in a way that's above grade level. But the rest of the kids, but the teacher is like, okay, you've answered the question, and they're continuing to teach the lesson at that pace. And so the Black boy disengages because they're like, well, I've answered the question. I answered it right. I get it. I don't know what everybody else waiting on. And so then they start flipping their pencil or hanging upside down in the chair. And then it becomes, why don't you sit still? Why don't you do this? And then, so I think by the time they get to middle school, then they start getting kicked out of class. So by the time they get to middle school, like, they're just delusioned with math. So I think it's so important as teachers that we just be less rigid with what the expected behaviors in class are. How can we capitalize on all of the energy that boys have, in particular Black boys, and let that work to help them learn versus to be a deterrent to them learning? Like, if we know that if they're not going to sit in their seat and be still, like, what can we do? Can we have manipulatives? Like there's something we can do to turn that energy into something that's goes along with the grade level learning versus it's something as a deterrent from the grade level learning.
Most definitely, because that
all of that to say, that's what I think the problem is.
No, you have said a lot, and you was feeding my soul because of the simple fact that energy is there. And one thing that sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. It's when you in math, you can know when you're right. And you can test it out, and like you can hypothesize, will this work? And you can actually go through the process of proving that it works. And being right or finding the answer, it is addictive. It just does something to you that it, like you said, it builds your confidence. The endorphins, everything start moving when you're like, oh, I get it, like that aha moment. And one thing, and I'm not trying to call all Black boys as monolithic, it happens with everybody, but honestly, with everybody, when you get those moments and those moments happen more and more and more, like it just becomes an addiction. And when you think about in a good way, like you get addicted to the
Yeah, I get
process
it.
of going through and figuring it out. And I've learned to harness all that energy to those moments and building a classroom where that if that looks like a moment of celebration, a moment of just allowing students to engage and encourage their peers. And one thing about boys, I will say, is they love playing games and being competitive. And you have to teach them, because once you start playing games and everything like that whole talking junk, that thing,
it's gonna happen.
It's gonna get serious in there. Like you so you have to moderate it, but there's nothing like everybody wants to show up and don't want to be the weakest link. And in order to do that, you have to know your content. You have to know what you're talking about. And so I love how you painted the picture, just took us down the road of what you have seen as it relates to mastery of our Black boys. And we're not trying to, because one thing I don't want people to hear, just be like, oh, we should just let the class them do whatever they want to do. No, there are still right. There are still expectations. We are harnessing the energy. And that's what I love about your approach. And so let me just ask you this. You've been a lover of mathematics for a long time. Why is, and you alluded to it when you started talking, but why is math mastery so important? Again, why is math mastery so important?
We need it to get along in life. You know, a lot of times people will talk about, well, we need more people in STEM careers and we need people to get high paying jobs. Yes, that's part of the story, but that is not the whole story. There is, no matter if you're in a STEM field or not STEM field, in life, you're going to have to navigate this world, and you're going to need to know how to do math in order to navigate the world. One thing that I've been referring to a lot lately, well, in the last 3 years, is the pandemic. Understanding what exponential growth is.
Yeah.
When we were talking about how the virus spreads, understanding like transmission rates, understanding like just different mathematical, there were so many mathematical terms being used during that whole period that the general population needed to understand literally in order to survive.
Yeah.
Like it was literally a matter of life and death, all the statistics that were given. So math is just necessary just to navigate life, just to live. And I know that's an extreme example, but you named an example earlier when you got a job and you were like, I got more month than I got money. How can I fix this?
Oh, it needed to be fixed because I was frustrated. I said, why I ain't got no money? Was so mad and broke. Oh my God.
Exactly. Or just even thinking about the things we have to do to navigate, like buying cars, buying homes. Like we don't want to fall victim to predatory lending. Like all these numbers they're throwing at us, do they even make sense? Going to the grocery store, figuring out if a sale is really a sale when, because they quit and put something for sale. Right. But if you really think of, is it a sale? I don't know. There's like, you can get one for $20. You can get 5 for $100. If you, you thinking, I'm gonna get the 5 for 100. Okay. But it's not, you're paying the same price. So just being able to navigate life, and be fiscally responsible, just understanding, making decisions. You just need to understand math to be a critical problem solver.
I love the critical thinking part. And I think, as you talked about like the mastery of mathematics, what it does, I think about sitting in those classes and analyzing and making those connections. And when I started really teaching, because when I went through school, like you said, the scribe, I sat there, I mimicked the teacher. I had a great memory. I had a great ability. And when I learned my master's program, that I had the ability to chunk information. And that's why I would literally take formulas and just chunk them up into pieces and bring them in and write everything down before I started the test. But, like when you asked me why, nobody ever showed me why. So I can explain why, but going through that, synthesizing that process and going through and making those connections later on in life, I saw how that is such analyzing and trying different methods and going in the whole process of what math does, how it can make you a better person, a better leader, make you better in making decisions. Using that part of the brain that really, that executive function and part of our brain that really analyzes and puts sense into life. And so I love that. I love what it does. And there are times where, like I always use completing the square, like that process may not ever be able to use. You might not ever see it outside of doing that with quadratics or thinking about solving the equation for a circle, but that these steps, like the following through the steps and thinking about in life that if I want this, what are the steps that I need to do to get there? Like it just makes more sense. And so when I think about that, and I can tell, I've never been in your class, but I can tell that you are an amazing teacher. I just know it. Not just only because you have the passion. I was telling somebody just the other day, as I go out and speak, like we need passion and we need skill, because that's what's going to bring impact. Like you said, you can go in and unbed, I'm just going to save the world. But if those kids never learn math, you'll be like, all right, I got to go save somebody else's world, because you find out that you're not skilled and you have to build like your skill set and do it and doing that. So, my question to you is, what advice would you give mathematics teachers or facilitators or leaders concerning math and the teaching of mathematics? What advice would you give those individuals?
First and foremost, passion always helps. Like, know your purpose and why you are there. But what you have to back that up with is mathematical content knowledge. A lot of times, particularly now with teacher shortages, if people are like, oh, you're good at math, math, you can go teach it. Having math content, like being good at math, is different from teaching math.
Yes,
and understanding the pedagogy for math. So so you have to step outside how you learn math. Not to say how you learned it was wrong, but just this is very highly likely that you learned it in a very proceduralized way, because that's how we teach it here in the United States. But being willing to step outside of yourself and be open-minded to different approaches to math. So like digging into the content. I often tell people, as good as I was at math, I don't think I truly learned it until I had to teach it, because I had to go in, understand the why. Why is this working this way? Don't be afraid to make mistakes in front of your students, or don't be like, we're all in this together. I'm not infallible as a teacher. We're learning this together. And sometimes students would ask me, well, why does that formula work? Or why does that procedure work? And sometimes I didn't know the answer. And I wasn't afraid to say, I don't know. I was like, that's great. Either if we had time, we talked through it then and try to figure it out. Or I was like, extra credit to the person who can come back tomorrow and tell me why, and we'll have a discussion. Yeah. So, be vulnerable with your students, but definitely dig into that content so that you will be able to recognize when students have unconventional approaches to math. If you have that deep understanding of the why, then you can recognize that approach, and then you can make those connections to all of the different approaches that your students have.
I want to stop you real quick, because you just hit on something. Because I remember when I first started teaching, I did not like students' unconventional approaches to math, because mainly when I look at it now, I just didn't understand them. I was just like, I can't help you. If it works, it works. But like you said, until I started to understand the why, I can see oh, they're just doing this in a different way. And they're taking this
Mm-hmm.
piece and they're joining it with that. And I would never thought to even do that. But again, that
Right.
content knowledge restricted the creativity for my students. And I
Mm-hmm.
literally shut that stuff down. I hate
Mm-hmm.
to admit it now. I cringe saying it, bro. I really do.
Hey, when
But
we
I
know
was
better, we do better.
Yep, I literally shut down the creativity. Sorry, I just had to interject for that because it's such a good point. Such a good point.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing it. Yeah, because I mean, first year teacher coming off the street like me, I literally came in off the street. Like I took my education classes while I was teaching
Right.
because I was like an emergency license. We need some math teachers type situation.
Yeah, yeah,
So coming in off the street, like, did I know how to do that? No, but with time, I got better at doing that. I got better with like, well, let's just talk through it right now. Like, this is what I know about this procedure. This is what you did. As a community, can we make those connections? How he did it this way, I did it this way. Why are we ultimately doing the same thing?
Wow, yeah.
But yeah. And math teachers, I mean, we don't like who in the world knows everything about
Right,
anything?
right, right. Most
We're
definitely.
learning just like the students are learning.
I promise you that yeah. And when I started, like you was talking about, taking on that journey to become more vulnerable, making mistakes in front of my kids and realizing like I remember one day I've been teaching scientific notation for years now. And when numbers wasn't in scientific notation, and we call it the give and take, do I need to put the decimal here? And I started to, I came up with a more like an algorithm after students know why we're moving the decimal, why you have to increase the multiplier because you're decreasing the number to keep the number equivalent. So they understood that. But one year I went to the classroom and it wasn't give and take, it was give and give and take and take. And I said, y'all, I came back and said, listen, I'm sorry, but I taught y'all wrong yesterday. I don't know why I was like give and give and take and take. It was like it's give or take, give and take. Like you can't do both because the number won't stay the same. But I literally came back and said, y'all, we got to unlearn what Mr. O'Neill taught you all yesterday. But that moment was a moment for me to be like, and just humble yourself. Like give your kids the same grace. Give yourself the same grace at the same time. And so here's my final question for you. I have enjoyed talking to you, Ro. Like this has really been good.
Been great.
It has been amazing. I'm gonna package it two ways. I'll ask the first one. You now ask the second one. However you want to answer it, you can answer it that way.
Okay.
What is your personal mission as of right now as it relates to advancing students in math education? That's my first question. And then, is there anything in mathematics teaching that you would like to change, or anything in mathematics education that you would like to change? And maybe that's tied into your personal mission. I don't know, but I just wanted to hear the combining answer of those questions.
Okay, great questions. Got me being all philosophical. So my personal mission, like I know in my current position, I no longer work directly with students. So my personal mission is to enable and equip educational practitioners, whether they be teachers, school leaders, district leaders, state leaders, to disrupt the current system that we have. The system as it is designed is leading to predictability of outcomes by race and socioeconomic status.
Right.
And so the system operates just like it was designed it was designed to operate. So we have to disrupt that. And I want to be able to equip and these educational practitioners to be able to recognize how the system is playing into that predictability, and to give them the tools that they need to disrupt that at whatever level they're working in the system, to understand what their role is in the system and what is within their circle of control and commitment that they can make changes to in order to disrupt that system. So that is my personal mission. And I think so. That's what I would like to see different. I want.
I know. I was just about to say, you just with the
Do we
mission.
want a revolution? Woo, woo, yes. Yes, it's time for a revolution in the math streets.
Oh boy.
We have to think about math in a different way. We have to prepare students to be 21st century learners. We have to prepare them to navigate a world that is very different than the world we grew up in. And a world that there's so many unknowns. And so you don't know. We just got to give you all the tools so that you can put those together in a way to navigate your world as a 21st century citizen. So that is my...
That is your mission. That is the thing
mission.
you want to see change.
Yes.
We need a math revolution. That's what we want. That's what we want. We're not going to keep doing the same thing. That does not work. I love how you pointed back to your business, bringing in like, if we were in business and we're losing money, I mean, millions of dollars, why are we still doing the same thing?
Right.
Why? But why? It don't work. It doesn't work.
Yes.
Doesn't work. So I have enjoyed my time with you, Rolanda, affectionately known as Ro. This has been amazing. And so I asked you in the beginning, is math a racist subject? Your answer was?
No, inherently it's not. But the way that we approach it in these here United States in the school system, it is. It can be.
Yeah.
But we have the power to disrupt that. It does not have to stay this way. We can cause a revolution. We can disrupt the patterns that lead to the predictability of outcomes based on race and socioeconomic status.
You listen, y'all heard it right. And I'm here to say I'm a part of this revolution. And hopefully listening today, watching today, you become a part of this revolution. This is Mr. James O'Neill with another Mastery for All podcast. Is math a racist subject? This is episode 4. It's been a blessing to everyone that's listening or watching. Have an amazing day. Listen, I hope you got everything you needed from this episode. If you did, please like, share, subscribe, do what you got to do to get this message out. As we talk about getting the message out, I would love to extend the offer to work with you and your teachers, whether it be a speaker, whether it be professional development, consulting, or even coaching. I am about that mastery for all life. So I want to extend that offer to you. My information is on the screen. But above all else, I'm super excited that you had space enough to welcome me into wherever you're listening to me at, all right? So I'm super excited that you decided to join me today. Have an amazing day.